Hi. I really didn't expect to cover or even talk about Stella Sora, which is the game that I'll be obviously referring to and covering today, but truth be told, this is a game that I was referred to or people asked me to give a look into, and from everything that I'd seen pre-release, the game was fairly exciting, had a similar-ish system or had a similar gameplay feature to another title known as Musume, which is like this whole roguelike intertwined with gacha feature that I think a lot of people enjoyed, though obviously Musume was very popular for other reasons. But in general, I thought that Stella Sora was a interesting and good game to kind of dip my toes into and stream, which is what I did more recently. And I have a few thoughts about the game as a whole because it surprised me in a lot of different ways, especially as someone that didn't do too much looking into or reading up on of the game prior to release. With that, today we're going to go over my experience with the game, how I feel, and why I think that this game really is shocking and so much different, almost to an insane degree, compared to or rather than what most people probably expected. And with that, let's get straight into it. So the first thing we have to talk about, and as you're seeing right now, are the visuals. The gameplay visuals, the actual visuals of the characters, everything from the UI to the design, everything in between is seamless. It's clean, and if it's this clean on a PC client, I can't even imagine how clean it is on something like mobile. Spoilers and obvious like UI stuff, disclaimers aside, everything that you could expect when it comes to menu UI design is obviously inspired by the other title, or technically I guess it's the other published title from Yoastar, which is the developers and producers or publishers for this game, which is obviously where a lot of the inspiration or a lot of the menu AI comes from, as it does look very similar to, well, Blue Archive. Now, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, regardless of which way you spin it, it is very clean. It's very crisp. The animations and the sounds and everything in between has really no major downsides. Going through menus is quite quick. Going through anything like your chat menus, your swapping through to the achievement menus, all these things are extremely crisp, no delay whatsoever, and I'd actually say it's smooth. That said, that's not even the best part in terms of the visual or kind of surface level appeal of the game, as the audio is quite interesting or very varied. It doesn't just feel like some reused sound effects. But what's even more insane is that depending on which disc, or rather weapon, which is, well, basically what the discs are, it's a replacement for weapons. Each of these discs have their own tune and BGM associated with them, which is just another added aspect to a title that really didn't have to go this extra level to even be acceptable or even, well, praiseworthy from a lot of players. And with that, again, you can literally click on any of these titles. There's a little bit of lore associated with each of these titles. You can actually hear the tunes that are associated with each weapon as well. And these are fantastic features, honestly, for a game that, once again, I really did not see too much coverage about, though I did see some people talk about it. But next, let's actually move to the gameplay of the game itself. Now, as you'll probably see in a moment, this is about what you would expect from a gacha team creating or a gacha progression system. And with that, you have things like the ability to farm out materials, and you also have things like, well, an auto system, which is honestly not a bad thing. Now, while there is an auto feature that is already present, there's also a quick battle feature, which is even nicer because a lot of titles, for whatever reason, sometimes skip through this option entirely and you don't have the ability to sweep. Now, that said, in terms of what the actual gameplay looks like, it's honestly not bad. I expected, truthfully, a title like this to look way more chibi-esque, and although this is semi-chibi-ish, this is definitely not the same as something like an Arknights or other titles that have the or most gameplay to be fixated around characters that literally look this big. This looks, in my opinion, a bit more acceptable. And with that, alongside this roguelike system that I'm going to go over a bit later, the deployment and the actual combat that you go through looks pretty impressive. Obviously, you could walk through and play this yourself, but the animations, they look smooth. The skills themselves are also pretty interesting. You have honestly pretty varied animations for any sort of fight that you're encountering. The bosses look fairly unique. Like, what are we even fighting right now? It's like a shopping cart boss. And overall, like, it has a very maybe not necessarily unique, but it definitely has a charm to it that I think most gacha games nowadays are kind of 50-50 on. Like, sometimes you see titles that do put the effort into things like this, but the overall animations, the sounds, the celebration, all of this is super clean and honestly above market average, I would say, for the average current gacha game in the space. Now, in addition to this, we do obviously have to talk about the characters and honestly my account progress, just in case if you're curious about where I am in the game and whether or not, oh, like, did you only touch a couple hours into the game? Well, first and foremost, the game's only been out at this point for about 12 or so hours. So of course I can't give you a 100-hour review, which, I mean, technically I could once I actually hit 100 hours. But as you can see, I've essentially soft locked myself out of the content a little bit. The story didn't take very long at all to go through, but what I've instead been waiting for is the 5-star selector, which again we'll go over in a little bit, which I think is pretty nice. But given that there is a piece of content that I want to wait for and get the selector for before I actually progress the rest of my account, all I have right now is level 9, which is definitely technically above average for where the average player would be. But in terms of my luck, I am actually on the luckier side. I got Chitose, who is the limited character from the banner in 110 pull. Sorry, I stole all your guys' luck. But in addition to this, when I was doing the re-rolling, I first got Nazuna, and I was then able to, with a single 10 pull, again, sorry for stealing your luck, on the standard banner, able to get Giri. Now, Giri and Nazuna is a combination that a lot of people were recommending from the beta, and, you know, we don't necessarily know what's been changed, and that's not a good thing, by the way, as we'll get into later when we talk about the gacha system. But from this, you can see I've upgraded a couple characters, I've tried out a few different teams, and my initial thoughts and from my understanding of what was explained and kind of experimented with in the beta is that running mono-esque teams just makes sense, as a lot of skill effects kind of revolve around buffing characters that are of your same element, and cross or mismatching of elements is not as viable or as combinable as you might think from other gacha titles. Now, with that, I just wanted to say that my account is, I wouldn't say fairly loaded, and again, outside of just buying the, I guess, the Welkin Pass equivalent, I haven't really invested too much into this game for a good reason, and I keep teasing towards it, but we'll see in a moment once we get to the monetary part of this game. But the characters that I have are decently upgraded. I'm at this point locked behind the tier up progression, and with this, of course, I'm only level 9. Now, in terms of this, I do also, or rather in addition to this, I do have a couple of A rank or 4-star or SR disc or weapons, which is pretty cool. But again, this is how many, this is how many weapons I've gotten essentially full free to play. Free to play plus with the Welcome Pass, apologies, or with super minor spending. And with that, honestly, I haven't felt much difficulty in what I've had to fight or in terms of the content of the game. I could easily see people that don't have this setup or that weren't privy or didn't necessarily look up like what you should reroll for, struggling with some of the content though. But as you probably saw with Chitose and in her in-game kind of profile, she does a load of damage, she's AoE, and she does synergize or have a pretty nice support who's already been included on or added to the recruit banner. So regardless of how OP or how good Chitose is, because I think the jury is still kind of out on that, the character still performs just as well as Gria, or I believe her name is Gria, and Nazuna. Giri and Nazuna, both of who kind of perform at around similar levels to my Chitose team. Now, let's actually talk about the gacha, though, on the topic of characters, because this is where you and many other people are probably going to be looking for or concerned about. So first and foremost, this is crazy. I don't even know what that animation or what that is, but like I saw this for the first time and I asked if I could even stream this on screen. In any case, this character is obviously the limited character. This is Chitose. She has a 120 pity, And with this, you also have the chance to pull for Teresa, who is a support for a water DPS, which Chitose is obviously. Now, in addition to this, there's a Jinglin, which is another support character that's on the banner. But in terms of pull or pulling in general, when you go to pull for a 10 pull, it is 3,000 of the premium currency, which maybe you are curious about what the conversion or what the translation of this is. It is not very cheap. It is roughly $100 for 8,500 Lumite. The bonus here, I'm assuming, means that you'll probably have less than this. I don't exactly. Oh, sorry. No, the bonus is just that it's doubled. I apologize. But it's 8,500 for $100, which I think people said is an increase to the closed beta, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Now, while this by itself is already quite expensive, to be honest, like 30 pulls, or rather a 10 pull costs 3,000 currency, which I believe roughly rounds us out to about $500 for a guaranteed pity. Keep in mind that as well, there is also a limited weapon here too. Now, they've also gone with an interesting route of having like a gold disc or like a coin system, as opposed to just using a universal ticket thing, which I know is a small nitpick or not something that many people care about. But personally, I'm not a huge fan of when gacha games have so many currencies, because then it makes it seem like you're trying to confuse the player into using currencies that they're unaware of or not familiar with, which never sits super well with me. But again, small nitpick, though again, this is also a 3,000 pull currency banner, which it is kind of expensive. There's like, you know, no way getting around this. Now, there is also a permanent banner, and with the start of the game, they did give us a full, or I believe they gave us 40 or 30 of this pull. I can't exactly remember. I can actually go through my mail though, and we can see exactly. But they've given us like a few pre-registration rewards. Not this one. Not this one. Oh yes. So we got 10 of these Sprout tickets, and in addition to this, we also got another 10 tickets, which is 20. The pre-release 30 tickets, and I'm assuming this is. Okay, so it's 30 of the standard banner tickets, and I believe we were also given either 20 or 40 of the limited tickets. Point being, as with most gacha games, at the start of the game, you were given a lot of currency, a couple free character, or rather a couple free limited character pulls, which is pretty standard for the game at this point. However, in terms of the gacha system itself, okay, the reason why people are so annoyed and honestly even upset with Stella Sora right now is because, though if you just got into the game and had seen these rates initially, maybe your initial gut reaction is, wow, that's expensive, like maybe I'm just gonna go free to play. Part of the thing that kind of rubs people the wrong way is that it didn't used to be 3,000. As far as what I've seen from the closed beta footage and from what people have talked about, the beta actually used to cost, or in the beta, the 10 pulls used to cost 1,600, which is about like a 95 to 100% increase in terms of how much it costs from, again, the closed beta, which is what everyone tested. Now, again, I think this is just pretty unusual. Like, I don't even, like, I could not even imagine what explanation or what reasoning they could give to justify this. But just out of base, despite the gameplay being honestly pretty fun, the visuals and the audio being extremely crisp, everything being really smooth, and even having a very lucky account, this just does not sit very well with me. Now, again, no matter what reasoning that they give in this case, it does just feel very unusual, and I'd even maybe go so far as to say a bit brash or offensive to the player base to not at least address or give any sort of explanation. Though again, I don't think it even matters at this point, because I think a lot of people are upset regardless, because they've kind of been like, you know, they've kind of had the rug pulled on them at the very last minute. To be clear, this is not something that was documented or seen or changed during the closed beta or from another beta and people just didn't catch on. This was something that no one was aware of, and people had even talked about online about how there was no 50-50, or there were, like, you know, these prices in terms of currency were not changed. And again, that's the sorry, I completely glossed over this. I should also say the game has a 50-50 for the character banner and a 75-25 for the weapon banner. As far as or from what I understand, there wasn't a 50-50, or there wasn't, or it was there was no documentation of a 50-50. I don't necessarily know like to what degree this is true or not, but from the people or from those that have spoken of their experience in closed beta, that was what was expressed and told. And now entering into a game that has almost double the price of premium pulls and also adding a 50-50 when there was formerly not a 50-50, or maybe the rates were slightly better at the very minimum, just feels very offensive and kind of like spit in your face type-esque for, again, a title that really looked, at least in my opinion, like it was coming out swinging. Because again, I think the roguelike system and the roguelike system in general is quite interesting, and the gameplay loop had me honestly hooked. Like, I just put this on auto, I'd go do like my other dailies or something, and on occasion I'd choose like the correct upgrade and I'd make my team stronger, which I think is cool. That's kind of the point, or that's kind of the main selling point of the game, and I think that's a good, honestly, replayable system. That's something that a lot of people probably will also like with an upcoming title with Chaos Zero Nightmare, and is also something that I'm sure a lot of people enjoyed to a certain extent with even titles like Uma Musume, where you're trying to pull for, or you're trying to re-roll like the perfect run or roguelike run so that you have the perfect the perfect heirs, or you have the perfect character, the perfect team loadout, whatever it is. And now we kind of have all that diminished, or the value of all this kind of murkied by this gacha controversy, which I think is quite unfortunate. Now, again, I didn't want to go too far in depth with it because, again, all my thoughts right now are as a level 9, which, to be clear, does take a little bit of time to get to. It's not like you're just handed level 9. You do have to like refresh, and I did also max refresh to see what you'd be able to unlock on first day with the obviously like earned in-game currency. But in terms of what we've seen so far, there's still a lot to be unlocked. If you just click on, if you just click on the missions tab, it actually describes or kind of gives you like a bit of like a teaser for what you have access to. You can now get, or you unlock like I guess like a new mode at 11. You unlock like a new level cap at level 13. You now have like a proving grounds at level 15. At level 20, you have like emblems, which I think is like what the actual gear is in the title. And then again, there's so many different, like, they've thought out a lot of the game all the way up until level 30 even, which is why it seems like such an interesting and fascinating title for a game that really had not that many heads spinning or turning or eyes on it compared to some of the other titles that are being announced or released in the future, including like Ananta and like Duet Night Abyss and Chaos Zero Nightmare, or at least from what I had seen. And this kind of rough or shaky starting point is unfortunate, to say the least. Now, I do want to say that as you've probably seen through the mail and from also what I'm about to show in a moment, there is a lot of like launch event free currency. And in terms of what you're able to receive, there is honestly like a good chance that you can get like 2, maybe even like 3 5 stars at the start of the game. And kind of similar to a game like Epic 7, you do have a initial reroll where you can choose up to 20 separate individual pulls, and then from those 20 you can choose the 10 pull that has the best list of characters that you like, and then you can run with that, which I think is something that almost no gacha games do nowadays, but is honestly pretty nice when it comes to Stella Sora. But in addition to this, they also have things like the ability for you to select like a 5-star disc for free. They also, through the starter gifts, they have a 5-star trekker, a standard trekker, so a standard character banner selector, which is also really nice alongside these free pulls just for logging in each day. But obviously, this isn't going to stop the fact that in terms of story currency and in terms of what we've seen so far, you're actually, as far as I know, not able to even make enough to get a 10 pull from doing the entire story, which is obviously very, very like confusing and outright just disappointing, even, because how are you supposed to get any of the characters then, or how are you supposed to experience the game when half of the content is not going to give you enough currency to actually pull for characters? Now again, this is already like, this isn't even assuming like that you or this isn't even accounting for whether or not you win the 50-50, which I think is a completely different conversation itself. But it's just unfortunate, and I know like how I'm feeling right now is probably the best that you could feel about the game, because I've gotten everything super easily, super luckily, super easily, or like super RNG-ly, which is great. But for those of you that are probably still running your polls into Chitose, like for those of you that still haven't gotten like your perfect reroll, or for those of you that like didn't realize all these things when you started to spend money or whatever, you really like the account and you're not able to reroll anymore, these rates and the free-to-playness of the game is kind of concerning. And again, it's so unfortunate because there's so much that I like about the game, like the AFK-ness, like every single piece of content or activity that you do, even when it comes to the in-game, makes you feel good about like either AFKing or like seeing, watching, or actually playing the game. Like even with something like the Menace Arena, it has like an auto like progression system where like you'll keep going up and up and up. And even from a strategy point of view, like from this Infinite Arena, like this is a sort of system or a sort of like tower system where you can only like run this tower or complete this tower and get these rewards if you run a mono element team. Like this is an interesting concept for content, but it's just like I don't think many people are going to care or consider or give this game a shot if like the underlying basis or the foundation of the game is very like rough and almost negative, which is again something that's unfortunate because I've seen this also happen, not necessarily to the in the devs fault, but like just in general, I've also seen this negativity or this initial like launch negativity come for like a game like Blue Protocol. And again, though Blue Protocol is not perfect by any means, don't get me wrong, I don't think the devs necessarily did anything like super heinous. Like they didn't try to rug pull anyone at the last minute. And that game, despite being essentially review bombed, is actually holding up, and a lot of people like the game, but a lot of people won't even try the game because of like the initial like review like stigmatism towards like the game, and like, you know, everyone rating the game overwhelmingly negative because of I think like initial, I don't know, perceptions or all the sponsorships that people took to kind of raise awareness for the game. In any case, it's just, listen, like the game is fine. Again, if I could show you like any more content or gameplay, I would. But even like when it comes to like the roguelike aspect, like there are a lot of interesting upgrades. It's a card system where you can pick and choose what sort of character or what sort of build that you want for your character. And it's not necessarily even just like a roguelike where, yeah, oh my god, like congratulations, you're given +10 attack. Like some of the roguelike upgrades, like if you like one of the characters, Anna, she like puts up a wind wall. One of the roguelike upgrades is now that she gives you like increased defense by giving you multiple wind walls. Or like if you walk through like the wind wall, like you gain attack, or if you shoot things through the wind wall, like you do more damage. It's just like, it's a well thought out game, honestly. It's just, it seems like the developers or the content makers, like the actual game, like gameplay loop developers, had one idea in mind, and then like the monetization side of the team were like, all right, and here's how we're gonna make the most out of it. And that completely like did away with or like ruined a lot of the experience, the positive like feedback or experience that I think a lot of people would have otherwise had. And like this, alongside the incredible NPC design, by the way, like all of the NPCs for some reason almost look better than the characters do in this game, which is also a shame because, you know, if this game ends up for whatever reason not doing as well as it should, maybe we won't be able to see some of these characters come to life as characters that you'll be able to play. In any case, I know this is a bit of a long ramble. I do want to leave you with a few tips and tricks though. If you are someone that's clicked on this and wanted to, you know, see or were curious about things to look out for when it comes to the game, first and foremost, and I think this is really nice, especially coming from Blue Protocol, keep in mind that the auto in this game is pretty damn good. This isn't, unfortunately, like Chaos Zero Nightmare, where Chaos Zero Nightmare's auto was really bad, honestly, which is unfortunate. But in terms of like what we have coming and the content available, you know, keep in mind that you should probably not do any hard spending until you see what you get from your selector. And even with the selector, I'd probably do 1 or maybe even 2 pities of the standard banner, depending on how many free banner pulls that we get before selecting your specific, you know, whatever character. In any case though, I don't even necessarily know if that's going to be the case because again, we don't necessarily get that much currency or it doesn't seem like we're going to get a whole lot of currency anyways, so maybe you can just choose a character in general. But this is just a general gacha rule where you don't want to pull forward or use a selector until you've seen who you've fortunately or maybe unfortunately pulled from a 5-star permanent banner. Now, in addition to this, you should also make sure, of course, to do your missions daily. But as a minor side note, almost, if I'm not mistaken, all of your EXP when it comes to leveling up your account comes from spending energy. And just in case you're curious, there are 2 different energy sources. There is the Stellanite Dust Exchange, which you can obviously exchange your premium currency for. There is these bottled sodas, which obviously give you 60. You also have the canned sodas, which is only 30, and they both have expiration dates. So obviously make sure to use these beforehand. But in addition to this, when you level up, if I'm not mistaken, you get 100 energy back. And in terms of daily or EXP and EXP resets and stuff like that, from what I understand, you recover one every, I think it's every 5 or 6 minutes, but you can obviously see on screen it's at least 2 minutes from here. That said, you should also know that the reset every day, I believe, is either at 2 or 3 p.m. EST, whatever that time is for you, whether that's 12 p.m. PST or 11 a.m. PST. That's totally fine. It's just a little bit different because I feel like most gacha games either reset like at the like crack of dawn or whatever, like 5 or 6 a.m, or it's like in the late night, like 8 to 9 p.m. or something. In any case, just some things to look out for. The final thing I do want to say though is that in terms of progression and upgrading your characters, it does feel like you have, at least right now, a lot of time where you can kind of upgrade several different teams, but that's not necessarily unintentional. It seems as though they do want you to build mono teams as opposed to group or like mix and match teams eventually. Now, initially, and as you will probably experience yourselves if you try this game out, Chitose or like some of the better characters when put together will just bulldoze or run through basically any content whatsoever, and it doesn't really matter. All you'll really be looking at is just who does the most damage, what do I have the most gear score on, or who's the strongest, and you slap the team together and you just run. However, I did find, and as I mentioned earlier, even if you find that you're able to get through some of the content with a mixed bag team composition, eventually or inevitably you will have content where you're only allowed to use a single element composition. And if that doesn't get to you, what will likely end up getting to you first is one of the upgrades from the roguelike or from the normal systems where it tells you that you aren't allowed to or rather, like, you won't receive the bonus because you'll increase like ignite damage or ventus damage, but you're a water character. In any case though, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. Hope they do something about this. I don't know what they would even do, but it definitely needs to be addressed. Again, I don't have the perfect answer. It just feels kind of wrong to me. And yeah, it is what it is, I guess. Stella Sora, whether or not the gameplay system is nice or not, is right now kind of dealing with a bit of a controversy. I apologize if I didn't cover it perfectly. This is just from what I've been reading through my Twitch chatters, from my YouTube comments, and also just a bunch of Twitter and like Reddit discussion about the game, because I think a lot of people are taken aback by what's transpired. Like, this is not normal. Like, normally if you see like a change to this, they would announce it first through like a dev blog or through like a Twitter post or something like that, but they did neither. In any case, yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed or learned something. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one though. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.